I'm Barry Pinsky. I'm the Executive Director of Rooftops Canada. Rooftops Canada is the international program of the cooperative and social housing movement in Canada. So effectively, we represent the non-profit side of the housing industry in Canada. And we've been working overseas for 25 years. Most of our work now is in sub-Saharan Africa. Our organization is rooted in the Canadian co-op and social housing sector. There's about 650,000 Canadian families that live in nonprofit housing. So we don't do the work in Canada, but we draw on that Canadian experience and Canadian expertise to work with some of our overseas partners. There's a huge global demand for housing microfinance. I think most Canadians would be shocked to know that 1 billion people in the world live in urban slums. That's 200 million families. We've learned over the last few years that an absolute key element to help people move forward is microfinance targeted to housing. The number one step is they have to secure land, and that often requires government action. Sometimes land can be bought, but a lot of the land is actually in the hands of government in developing countries. Once land is secured, people want to invest. So there's a huge pent-up demand for housing loans. Our challenge as Canadians, wealthy people, is how to make those loans affordable and to get them down to the ground where people can use them. We work in a very specialized area of microfinance, which is housing microfinance, which is kind of an emerging new sector. Most microfinance lending is for small enterprises. We're trying to lend people money so they can build a house step by step. Buying land and then building a room and a second room and a third room. So it's a specialized area of microfinance. The key thing in many ways about microfinance is the small loans, and usually a series of loans to people. The big difference with housing loans is each increment of loan is bigger, and housing microfinance is built on relational lending. So you've got to know your client, and typically clients don't have a lot of collateral. So you're not looking for collateral to back up the loan. You're looking for a person that you want to invest in, which is of course why something like 80% of microfinance in the world is targeted to women. Everyone has learned long ago that women are more stable, better borrowers, and much keener to pay back because they know the impact on their families if they don't repay loans. A real on-the-ground example, last November I was in Nairobi, and I met an older woman. I guess she by now must be in her late 50s, early 60s. And 22 years ago, she moved onto a piece of land and built a shack. And over those 22 years, she's gotten 7 loans from the National Co-op Housing Union. And with those loans, she's room by room built a house for herself, her family. A couple of her adult kids are still living in the house. She's got a small shop at the front of the house, and we had the great pleasure of being involved in the last loan. There's pretty much nowhere else to build on this site, so it's filled up, and at times some of the rooms have been rented out to other people, so that's become an additional source of revenue on top of the shop. And our involvement was we helped arrange a loan with a Canadian guarantee. So the local organization got a loan from a Kenyan bank backed up by a Canadian guarantee, and this woman's final room was built with one of those loans. So it was a fabulous example of what can happen, and it's so outside our own experience. Right. 22 years to build a house step by step, but a fabulous asset now, not only for her but obviously for her children as the family, the family moves ahead in life. Rooftops Canada really focuses on building the capacity of local organizations. They might be non-government organizations, NGOs, financial institutions. We work with savings and credit cooperatives. They might be housing co-op movements, even government departments. So we're quite pleased that the association of this woman is not so much with Rooftops Canada. Okay. That doesn't really matter to us. What matters is there's a very, very strong association with her own housing cooperative because the loans have come through her small cooperative of 50 families and the national organization that's supporting the grassroots cooperatives. So we very much believe that that's the way to move forward. A lot of people think we should be on the ground making loans and building houses. We don't. We build organizations, and then they can work on the ground with low-income communities. So globally, we don't need a lot of money. We have to figure out how to channel the money that the world has into urban poor people. And of course, in the process, we would create an enormous number of jobs and economic activity, and set up a new platform for economic growth in those countries. So I think what we're doing, and a lot of people are experimenting are doing, is figuring out how to do it. And our other big challenge is how to mobilize the resources at scale to make it happen. Yeah, I think we've become a bit obsessed with return on investment in the world of microfinance. Realistically, for very poor people, if you want to make a difference, we have to figure out how to blend the return on investment with subsidy. So part of the business can be done on a commercial basis as long as part of the business is also subsidized. And realistically, loads and loads of microfinance institutions are subsidized. They either get cheap capital from outfits like Kiva that have got, I don't know, $150 million, $200 million out there at 0%, which is pretty good capital, because it may sound, well, even in Canada, 0%, we're only paying 2%. But if you're in Kenya, the commercial rates are 12%, 14%, and in other countries it's higher. So getting money at 0% is a fabulous benefit. And if you can blend that with commercial money, so I think that's what we need to find. And the way we work is, our work is based on the demands from the partner organizations we work with in Africa. We never showed up in some country in Africa and said, you folks need housing microfinance. It's very easy to find organizations that are looking for ways to respond to the housing crisis, and it really is a crisis in sub-Saharan Africa. And a lot of them have tried little loan programs, tried to help people save some money to buy land. What we have found is there's many housing organizations struggling in Africa with the issue of urban slums. And one of the solutions we've discovered together is to try and develop forms of microfinance that are suitable for people or groups of people to buy land and build housings step by step. It's not a product we particularly have to go and sell. It's a solution that's really emerging from the experience in countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, where we work. And it seems to be effective. So when people see other groups and other individual households having some success building their houses that way, the demand just builds on itself. Our work right now in sub-Saharan Africa is targeted to 5 countries: Kenya, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, and South Africa. We do base ourselves for part of the year in South Africa and work from there in the other countries. We also have a regional advisor based in Nairobi who's an expert in housing microfinance. Our work in South Africa is in 2 areas: slum upgrading, working with some of the government officials that are trying to develop a program to sort of convert slums into proper communities with decent housing and good services. And we also work with the social housing sector in South Africa, which provides rental housing that has a lot of state and government subsidy, but that rental housing is run on a non-profit basis, just like our social housing is in Canada. Certainly for the next 5 years, probably one of the main focus areas for Rooftops Canada will be on housing microfinance. We're trying to scale up with a number of our partners and also develop a regional support program around housing microfinance. I expect it'll go on for much longer, but we sort of planned in 5-year horizons, and we've just had our funding programs with the Canadian International Development Agency renewed for 5 more years, and something like 60 or 70% of the program is in the area of economic growth, which is sort of the cover for the work on housing microfinance, because clearly the work we do contributes enormously to economic development as well as providing good, safe housing for people.